What the hex is in this box? Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from HEX Instruments asking me if I would like to check out one of their new guitars. So HEX Instruments is a South Korean-based company founded originally in 2014, mainly for acoustic guitars. They also make classical guitars as well as ukuleles. But just a few years ago, they decided to start making electric guitars. Now here we can see they have the common Stratocaster knockoffs. They have a slightly modified telly, which I always like it when manufacturers still change up the shapes to make them a little bit more their own, but it birthed some pretty interesting models. Like, look at this flame top T style with a wheel adjustment for your truss rod. Kind of a weird looking headstock with comfort cuts on the back if you're into that, in many different finishes. But here's the interesting thing about this video is they didn't hire me to sell you on these guitars. They hired me to do a review to show to music stores to stock their stuff to then sell to you. So yes, this is a sponsored review, but as far as buying one of these in the United States, you'd have to contact them directly because they don't currently have a dealer in our country. But they just came out with their own new body shape, which kind of plays off of the Music Man Majesty. It also kind of looks like maybe a Mineric Lotus or Goddess guitar, but you know, without any of the crazy controls, and it's a little bit more compact. So let's go ahead and check out the new HEX W300. All right, so first things first here, they come in a standard triangular box. I'd actually say the boxes feel pretty high quality, and their pack job was good. And then inside that box, you get this actually a pretty nice gig bag. It's got some good padding to it, and aesthetically, I think it looks pretty nice with the gray and black. The zipper seems to work pretty good. And we've got a compartment out here for your music or whatnot. So let's go ahead and see what this is all about. Oh, okay. I was expecting like a really glossy finish, but that's pretty flat. But that's an interesting inlay right there. You've got like the honeycomb and then our headstock. So first impressions here, this is insanely light. Like, I can tell the body weighs almost nothing, whereas the rest of the weight is definitely in the neck. Hopefully that doesn't mean we're going to have neck diving issues, but it looks like the strap button placement is going to be all right for that. But it's got this interesting charcoal metallic finish to it, and it's not actually satin, it's like a semi-gloss. But I wasn't necessarily expecting this swoop right there. You can definitely see that way better in person. That's very exaggerated. The reason why I said it kind of looks like a Mineric guitar, some of those other ones, is because of this little swoop right here. But now that I have it in my hands, this is nothing like the Majesty shape. It just kind of has the vague outline of it up here. And that's why I was all right reviewing this model, because I just thought it was something completely different, and it's hard to make a new body shape because there's so many body designs out there. It's hard to not be influenced by someone. But it looks like we've got two pretty basic humbuckers here, but we do have the truss rod wheel. But the biggest claim to fame here is they are using stainless steel frets on these guitars that they tell me cost somewhere around $400 USD, which is insane. A stainless steel refret would cost you more than that. So far, I think that spec is the big selling point for these as compared to other things you could buy at similar price points. And I like this headstock that they have on this one. Their other one looked a little bit too blocky. This kind of looks futuristic. And I guess the whole hex branding makes sense that you've got hexagons right here. But now as far as the backside is concerned, it looks like this is a string-through style guitar. You've also got a comfort cut. And then we've got a plain maple neck, but it has a very similar finish over top of it, so it's not raw feeling or anything like that. But hey, would you look at that? Locking tuners. That's another great value-added feature here. And it looks like they're making these in Indonesia. I will say the neck feels obnoxiously long on this. Is it baritone? Probably not, but let's go ahead and throw this thing on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs before we get to a playing sample. Inside the HEX W300, let's take a look at our pickups first. So they just call these ceramic humbuckers, which had me worried because a lot of times on these import model guitars, they just have the dual slug coil humbuckers and they're not the best sounding, but they do the job. But this one, I'm impressed. It actually does have the adjustable pole pieces as well as the slug coils. And looking at the back, it looks like a decently made pickup, but I noticed over here we've got the gray wiring. So then I came over here thinking, do we have push poles? Yes, indeed, we do. So you get coil splitting options with this. this. So that means humbucker tones and single coil tones. So we'll have to see how that sounds. And our readings within the circuit, 7.11 in the neck, 13.77 in the bridge, and the middle position just for fun, 4.74. So they said a ceramic humbucker, but it actually gives me more like a 490R, 498T like reading. So who knows, these might sound a little bit more traditional than I thought. But then of course, don't forget your splitting, which could make it about 7, 3.6, and 2.38 in the middle. As far as the pickup cavity goes, not too much to report here. Although a small QC thing could be that there's a couple of dips right here that I can exemplify by putting the humbucker ring back on, but thankfully it covers it up when you install it. Although for the bridge pickup one, you can see a small dip right here. And here's a quick peek inside the bridge pickup cavity. Unfortunately, the lead length is a little bit too short, but it looks about the same as the neck. But I really like the aesthetic look of this bridge. It looks higher quality than it should be. For example, you don't have your screws sticking out, they're recessed into it, and it's got a nice beveled edge to it so you can rest your hand right against it without anything slicing into you. And then you've got individual saddles for each string, as is commonplace. And as far as the controls are concerned, it's just your black knurled knobs, pretty standard issue stuff. Got a pretty clicky 3-way switch, and it's just master tone, volume. As far as the finish is concerned, their website does indeed call it a satin. It's just a nice flat finish. Some nice matte paint, still has that nice color change effect depending on the lighting situation, and they do offer these in a few different colors. For some reason, when I was unboxing it, I was just expecting a full-on gloss black, but in many ways, I think players may prefer this. But I'm curious, will this actually buff up over time? So I'm going to take some polish just in this cutaway area to see if it does. Yes, indeed, just a little bit of polishing will turn that into a nice glossy finish. Here in a different lighting angle, you can see it kind of brings out the metallic nature of this paint as well. It's kind of cool. I did that in the cutaway area because it makes it look a little bit more dramatic within your transitions. So what that means for you as a player, if you rest your hand right here as you're picking and strumming, you'll just naturally buff some areas either over here by your knobs or where you rest your hand there. So that's something to keep in mind. If you don't like the flat finish, you can polish it up. It doesn't take too long. Let's move on from our body to the neck, which is pretty much the reason why you'd want to buy one of these in my opinion. But first, let's talk the specs. It is a rosewood fretboard with a maple neck. But what really caught my attention is this is real mother of pearl inlay on this. Typically at this price point, you're looking at pearloid materials, but that definitely reflects the exact same way as real mother of pearl. And I find these tiny dots to be stylistically pleasing for this particular body style. It looks very modern. And I already told you about the stainless steel frets. They appear to have a very basic cut to the edge of them. That's probably the one thing I would critique, is if we could have a little bit more rounding to the edges of them, because it can be kind of sharp, but it's not something that I necessarily feel while playing. That's just if you kind of wrap your thumb over, you might kind of catch it. But if that wasn't enough, this has a compound fretboard radius. So that means it starts around 12 inches and then flattens up to 16 by the time you get into the upper registers. That's just a high performance spec that not every guitar has. I mean, generally you're buying around the $2,000 price range to get something like that. Let's see what kind of scale length we're rocking. It's looking like 25.5, so unfortunately not baritone, but the reason this neck looks so long is the fact that you have a full 2-octave scale, 24 frets. And again, you've got your truss rod wheel down here. And then I'm impressed with this. They took the time to bevel the edges of the fretboard. A lot of times these budget guitars, they'll just leave it kind of blocky down here, but that makes it look higher end than it is. As far as our detailed neck specs, 1.65 inches for our nut width. That increases to 2.07 by the 12th. Got a first fret neck depth of 0.84, and that increases to 0.9 by the 12th, so that's definitely a pretty thin neck. But the shape itself is very interesting. Overall, it is a slim neck, but it kind of transforms. In your chording area, it has a little bit more of a hump to the back of the neck, but then that flattens out into a much flatter C shape. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. You can see that shape I was talking about, how there's a little bit of a bump at the back of the neck there, but then it gradually disappears into just a nice slim C shape. Then the headstock over here, you have the continuation of the rosewood fretboard until you get to your painted headstock cap. Then you've got a single string tree, and you've got a slightly reflective HEX logo on here. And then I'm really liking these tuners. They feel really quality. Sometimes there's cheap locking tuners that you're not sure if they're actually working. On first impressions, these actually feel pretty high quality. Now in the spec sheets, I couldn't find what the nut was made out of. It kind of looks like a Graphtec one because it's black, but I think it's probably just plastic. Now moving over to the backside. So this is an Indonesian mahogany body. Unfortunately, I was unable to see the actual wood anywhere. But it looks like we have a full-size Korean-made pot over here. Then we've got a nice fancy push-pull on this side. So if you don't like the pickups, it should be fairly easy to swap something else into here, as long as you have 4 conductor wiring pickups. If you still want the coil splitting abilities anyways, but it's just a standard 3-way toggle switch. And even though this looks the same color as the paint, that's actually shielding paint right here. You can see how they ground off to it right there. You've got a standard football output jack, and our strap buttons are at the bottom and right here at the top horn. They almost look like Schallers, but they're just kind of a larger strap button. The body on this guitar is rather thin. I would say at the fattest, it's about 1.5 inches. But the reason it feels so thin is this arm contour allows your body to hug the guitar a bit more, and then you've got the comfort carve right on the back there. So at this area where you feel it with your body, it is very thin. And then it is a bolt-on neck construction, but you can see they've slightly tapered it just to give you slightly better upper fret access so you're not getting caught up on the clunky heel. And kind of hard to see, but there is a very slight swoop in some of your angles there as well. But overall, fairly ergonomic. And I like the fact that they leave the neck alone. They could paint this and hide all the wood grain, but I've always been a fan of wood grain, even if this isn't the prettiest grain I've ever seen. But there we see our Made in Indonesia stamp. I would have liked to have seen some sort of serialization system on here. That way you know they care about quality control and things like that. But here's the backside of our locking tuners. And the neck does have a hump, which is kind of like a volute, but it's just how these things are constructed. The headstock actually goes in at about 4 degrees rather than the tilt back. And because of that, I think this guitar could get away with having 2 sets of string trees, but that would have to be a pretty tall string tree. All said and done, this is just a hair under 6 pounds. And so far, before plugging it in, if they could get these to the US market for $400, they would be a serious contender for the mid-range level guitars. But I'll wait for that final judgment after we hear if these are any good. So let's go ahead and plug it in and hear how it sounds. Alright, so first things first, is it neck heavy? Nah, it's actually pretty balanced, but you do feel a lot of the weight right here. But since it's not a super heavy guitar, it's not that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and get some tones. Man, they almost sound like active EMGs. Those are definitely ceramic pickups in here, though. The neck is a bit more tame. That bridge is very high. Now let's try the coil split option. Some interesting tones with that. This bridge pickup is strange. I don't know if I necessarily like it on the cleans. It's very overpowering. Remember, you can always tame it with your volume or tone controls. Alright, let's give it some dirt. Now we know all about HEX's Witch guitar. What's my final thoughts on this thing? If you like aggressive pickups, you're gonna like these. Like, they almost sound like EMGs. That's how attacking and overdriving they are to your amp. But if you're looking for some more mellow tones, either mess around with your volume and tones or just put something else in here. One thing to be aware of though is since this is a 24 fret, 2-octave fretboard, that does move your neck humbucker a little bit, so you don't have a lot of room to pick on this guitar if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. And even though the bridge is all nice and rounded off, I did find that the height adjustment screws can sometimes hit your hand. But as far as the fretboard situation, that is why you buy this guitar. Everything else can be modified, but this is so fantastic out of the box, even if you just wanted to take the neck off and put it on a different guitar. Action straight out of the box was perfect. I didn't have any fretting out or anything like that. Even though we talked about the neck shape being a little bit different here on the first fretting area, once you have it on a strap, you honestly don't notice it. It's just a very blade thin neck. So if that's what you like, you will enjoy this guitar. But I find myself usually liking slightly chunkier necks, so this is definitely more towards somebody who wants to do some shred guitar, which is kind of interesting that they don't have a tremolo system on this guitar. But for me personally, that's a plus. I don't really like messing with trems too much. I think if they can get this to the American market at $400, yeah, they're gonna sell a good amount of these. Really, the only thing I can complain about is I don't like the headstock much on the HEX guitars. It still just looks a little bit clunky in my opinion. But I get it, it's hard to design a completely unique headstock and body shape style, so I'm glad they're trying. If you're interested in a HEX guitar, you can reach out to the company directly using the email in the description. As with any purchase, I suggest using something like PayPal or a credit card so you have some buyer protection. Tonight's review and demo was sponsored by HEX, and opinions of this video were based on the one that they sent me. So Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed today's review and demo. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.